There was a priest who was going to be performing a baptism for a family with their first child. And before performing the baptism, he approached the young father and he said very solemnly, "Now, baptism is a serious step. Are you prepared for it?" "I think so," the man replied. "My wife made appetizers and we have a caterer coming to provide plenty of cookies and food for all of our guests." And the priest shook his head and he said, No, I don't mean that. Are you prepared spiritually?" He said, "Oh, sure, we have a keg of beer and a case of whiskey." Baptism is a serious step, all joking aside. There have been long arguments as to whether to baptize only adults who say that they believe in Jesus, or to include children, especially infants, in those baptisms. And I think for us, as you know, we grow up in the church and this is what we do, but we don't always think about the origins of baptism other than what we have from our text today. But if you look back into the culture that Jesus was born into, he was born into Judaism. And Judaism was incredibly diverse in the time leading up to the time of Christianity. Now we know that there were some groups that practiced ritual immersion, which meant they physically went down into and under water. We also have physical evidence and descriptions of ritual baths, or what they call fonts, and they literally were in the ground. And they're discovered in and around Jerusalem, and a place called Qumran, where the Dead Sea Scrolls were found. You may have heard of that. But groups like the Essenes practiced regular ritual immersion, which meant it was every time they came to worship, they would wash, and it was seen to be an act of purification. So there's actual texts, people that have written about it, and we have this evidence, physical evidence on the ground, that there are groups that were obsessed with this ritual purification. But the Christian approach to baptism, like many other approaches to Jewish rituals, has been adapted and changed. Think about Jesus. Jesus took the Passover meal and invested new meaning upon it. It's something that we will share today. This is my blood, this is my body, and I give them to you. So by following the practice that Jesus began by being baptized by John, ritual immersion is given a new meaning for us. So instead of a regular ritual immersion that's done every time you would go and worship, our ritual, which is a sacrament, is done once for all time. And as we say in our baptismal liturgy, baptism happens in a moment, but it takes a lifetime to live out. And Jesus sent his disciples out to baptize, and as we heard in Acts, Paul did the most for the practice of baptism. Now today, I invite you to consider your own baptism. Now I know probably many of us were baptized as infants, and so to think about it may not bring it back any memories. Some did take part in what we call often believer's baptism. You were maybe a teenager or an adult. We have baptized young people going through the confirmation program, baptized them and then received them as members of the church. Now, I know that infants likely do not remember the actual experience of their first steps as a disciple of Christ. And that's one reason I always invite our children to remain when we perform a baptism. And Chloe's here today. She was just baptized about a month ago. And we don't take part in many rituals in our culture. And baptism is a sacrament. And it's a ritual of and for the faith community. So no matter how you got wonderfully wet, you share a path with every other Christian who professed their growing faith and their desire to know Jesus better. Remember your child's baptism or your grandchild's? I invite you to think about baptism, your experience of it and with it. And I'm going to share this kind of poignant story of a baptism that might not have been. Robert Fulghum, in his book called From Beginning to End, shared the story about Max, an infant who was born with a tiny hole between the chambers of his heart. Surgery could repair it, but it was risky, and the parents, of course, were devastated. They wanted to hunker down with their little boy and his little bit older sister, Sarah. But good friends encouraged them, and they decided that he would be baptized, and they adapted the baptism ritual in a beautiful way. And they invited close friends, family, and their surrounding neighbors in their neighborhood. And they didn't know everybody. But upon arrival, everyone who came was coached by their friend, this family's friend, Cy, who turned out to be a character, and was the master of ceremonies. And they began with baby Max resting comfortably, sleeping in his father's arms, and Cy proceeded. And he says, "We've come together on this fine day in May to rejoice in life and to welcome life bound up in this child. We've come to take time to notice one another, to see ourselves in the many ways we affect the life of this child as neighbors, friends, family, and parents. And I asked of the parents, what name have you given this child?" This is sounding a little familiar, isn't it, about our baptisms? "Maxwell Peterson Brown," his mother said. And little sister Sarah piped up, "But we just call him Max." So we light this candle for Maxwell Peterson Brown. May his light shine now and all the days of his life. Welcome, Max, to the long pilgrimage from birth to death. Anything can happen here. Everything is possible. Welcome to the companionship of the human family. And at that point, Max woke up and opened his eyes. And Cy, the master of ceremony, picked up the bowl of water through which this little boy was going to be baptized, and came over and said, "Your mother and father are pretty sure you were conceived on a camping trip, when rain kept them cuddled together in the tent for the weekend. That's what they hoped and wanted. Your father filled a canteen with water that was pouring from the tent to keep it, to use to drink a toast to your mother, in case she got pregnant. Some of that water was saved for this occasion as well. Water is the most ancient and universal symbol of life, used in every religion as a sign of vitality. For without water, there is no life. So on behalf of this community, I place water of this stream of life on your forehead." And before Cy could dip his hand in the water, little Max beat into it, slapping his tiny fist into the water, splashing himself and everyone standing around. His little sister Sarah laughed, igniting laughter around the room. And before the bowl of water could be moved out of reach, Max slapped the water again, smiles, gurgles, and kicks his feet and waves his arms. The master of ceremony wipes his eyes and says, "Thanks, Max. We came to you to bless you, and it is you who has blessed us." We are a community. We look around today, and when we come to worship, we truly notice each other. And today I invite you to recognize what we share in the ancient and timeless blessing of water and the Holy Spirit. Life-giving water, life-affirming bread and cup, where we meet each other and Jesus face to face. So I invite you to come and touch the water of life and be renewed in the Spirit. Remember those who have gone before us and those who are just beginning their faith journey. Come. And in case you were wondering, Maxwell Peterson Brown did just fine, and you'd never know what he'd gone through if you saw him tearing around his neighborhood. Amen. I invite you to turn in your bulletin share with me our reaffirmation of baptism. Let us pray. Powerful God, whose voice penetrates the wilderness of our hearts, and whose transforming reality is symbolized in the act of baptism, take us now to the River Jordan, that we might share Jesus' moment of emptying self, to receive your Spirit and all its power. Move us to remembrance that we have been baptized, that your grace was poured out on us, not because we earned it, because of your amazing generosity. Amid the wonder of it all, we would accept once more Christ's call to discipleship. Amen. During our hymn, all who wish to reaffirm their covenant baptism vows is an act of a recommitment of faith. You may come forward and touch or be touched by the water, then fused by the Spirit. And we have water from the Jordan River, so indeed you will be coming to the Jordan.